Thomas sat down and looked across the table at his loving family. He reached across for the small white plate and took a slice of bread. Then everything went dark. In industrial Manchester, the cityscape was that of dirty black soot-stained mills, powered by machines. They were dwarfed by the huge chimney stacks that towered high above, pumping out smoke and fumes, helping to create the poor air that made so many people sick. Hanging like a low mustard fog, making the city's inhabitants cough and gasp, stinging their eyes and the back of the throat, living their lives in perpetual gloom. Quote, "One receives one's first imitation of Manchester's existence from the lurid gloom of the atmosphere that overhangs it. There is a murky blot in the section of sky, however clear the weather, which broadens and heightens as we approach. And now the innumerable chimneys come into view, tall and dim in the dun haze, as noted by Hugh Miller from his First Impressions of England and its People, 1847. A dense forest of smoking chimneys dominated the skyline, with about 500 chimneys pouring out smoke in 1840 alone. They did come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but generally these chimneys were built of brick and cylindrical in shape, with some standing over 300 feet tall. On the 12th of January 1899, Thomas Shawcross was walking home down the cobbled road to his home, number 5 Great Newton Street. He stretched as he walked. His body ached as he spent his days working hard long hours as a labourer. He looked up at the dark rumbling sky. The wind was building too. He could tell a storm was on the way. He got home and washed up for tea. His family were already sat at the table waiting for him. And he sat down at the head of the table and smiled at his 4 children and his 2 grandchildren. Thomas was happy to come home to such a large family after such hard, grueling days at work. Sat either side of Thomas, at the head of the table, were his son-in-laws, married to his eldest daughters, and his youngest children were sat down the far end of the table with their mother. It had just turned 6:45, and with tea dished out and everyone ready to eat, Thomas leaned forward and picked up a slice of bread from the plate. And as he looked up, his eyes met with his wife's, and they smiled at each other in contentment. They could hear the wind howling outside, but life was good. Just then, there was a new sound among the sound of the roaring wind. There was a rumble, which turned into a horrible groan. The house shook as Thomas looked at his wife's terrified face, and then, with a bang, everything went black. As Thomas woke, he couldn't think. He wasn't sure where he was. He tried to move, but everything hurt. He lay down again and just listened. He heard sobbing, very quiet sobbing. He remembered his girls. He sat up, realising he was covered in bricks and wood. He stood and almost fell back down again with shock. His home, his entire house was gone, and just rubble scattered the street. He cried out for his wife, his children, as he waded through the debris, throwing wood and parts of his shattered home out the way. He saw his nephew alone in the rubble, half covered by a wooden chair. In shock, Thomas scooped him up and ran over the collapsed wall into the passageway that was at the side of his house, and down into the street. Looking back at his home and the path of destruction, Thomas could see what had happened. The high winds from the gale had toppled the massive mill chimney stack that belonged to Standard Finishing Company on School Street. It had collapsed and flattened his home. With the huge crash of the accident and the shouting from Thomas, all his neighbours had come running. Some ran to help Thomas dig out his trapped family members, while others ran to the local fire station for help. The firefighters also came to help rescue the survivors from the wreckage. The first who was rescued was Thomas's wife, Mrs. Shawcross, who was alive but had a massive head wound. She told Thomas she was okay and asked him to find the kids before she was whisked away to the Royal Infirmary. The next they found, not far from his mother, was Thomas Chimney. And then, as the rescuers searched, they found more survivors. Thomas's married daughter, Eliza Howarth, and her baby, Edith, and his other married daughter, and her husband, Samuel and Sarah Richardson. But the hope that had been building with each survivor found was soon shattered, as everyone else was found deceased. Their bodies were placed in their neighbours' houses till the coroner could come and take them to the mortuary. But worse was still yet to come for Thomas. In this tragedy, just as they pulled the last body from the rubble, Thomas received news that his wife had died due to her injuries. With this, Thomas fell to his knees. 6 days later, on the 18th of January 1899, hundreds of people lined the streets, as the 5 coffins were carried to All Saints Church in Newton Heath. And the coffins of the 2 children were draped in all white flowers and carried by female mourners. On the 18th of January, Thomas buried 19-year-old Sarah Ann Shawcross, 8-year-old Elizabeth Shawcross, 5-year-old Annie Mae Howarth, Sarah Ann Buckley, and Thomas's wife, Mrs. Shawcross. Well, that'll do it for today. I hope you enjoyed that story. It was a tragic event, and it was almost lost to history. Let me know your thoughts in the comments of what you felt about this tale. And if you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe to see my new content uploaded every Wednesday. I also want to apologise, this video is a little bit different this week as I'm currently travelling around the south of England, so internet's a bit patchy and I haven't had quite time to sort out the video as much as I usually would. So thank you for bearing in with that one. Thank you for your continued support, and that'll do. Take care.